Blessings, fam.
What's going on, everybody?
Hi, everybody. It's me, Essence.
And Leonard.
And we're back with another episode of Love and Honor. I hope you guys are having a blessed day today. Hope all is well over there in your part of life, whatever it is that you're doing or dealing with. If it's hard, I pray it gets better. If it's great, I pray it gets better. I just hope all is well.
Yeah.
Boo, how you doing?
We need a new intro.
Really? What you want to do?
Love and Honor.
I don't like that one.
Well, that's kind of what we do now at the same time.
Okay, well, we can figure it out.
Yeah.
We can figure out something different. We'll look into that and see what we can come up with. So, but how you doing?
I'm doing okay. Tired.
Yeah, I feel you.
I'm always tired.
I'm tired too.
Yeah.
I just want to get 8 hours. I go to bed late and I feel like God is dealing with me. Like he's like, I feel like there's so many things that I need to do that God has called me to do. And I need to do it.
Well, he's the one who gave you 24 hours in the day. So,
is there 24 hours in the day or is there 12 hours in the day?
Well, if you stay up all night, then it's 24.
Well, then I have my 24 almost.
So he's the one who gave you those. So if he
gave me the hours.
So the stuff that he wants you to do within the day can be done within those 24 hours because he's the author of the time. So.
Yeah, I just need to get it done. Yeah. I need to do my part and not procrastinate and make sure that I'm taking care of business. And that's what I need to do. And so I have to do it. I have to go to bed earlier, make it. I notice that I have more dreams and God speaks to me when I go to bed
earlier.
Yeah. When I get sufficient sleep, I notice that I dream more and I feel that he speaks to me more.
Maybe you should start going to sleep when I go.
I'm not trying to go to bed at 8.
First of all, the kids don't go till about 10. Don't do that.
But you would go to bed at 8.
If I could.
Yeah. Because there's been times.
To the name of Jesus.
There's been times earlier. But yeah, so anyways.
I wake up early too. Don't do that. Okay.
You do.
I'm an early worm. You're a night owl.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Because you said it like I just be asleep.
Early worm, night owl. It's true.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, I hope everybody's doing well. I had a good day today. Yeah. Okay. So what are we talking about today, Boo?
Today we are talking about
the breakdown in communication.
I was going to say that.
Okay.
You think I knew?
I didn't.
The breakdown is right there on the screen.
Oh.
Yeah, it's actually communication breakdown if you want to be specific.
Excuse me. Yeah. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Okay. And so we're talking about communication breakdowns or breakdowns in communication because it might be changed. I'm saying we're talking about what's on the screen. I feel like breakdowns in communication might be a little more appealing.
Don't change it because you do all the posts.
No, that's anyways. So we're talking about communication breakdowns. I had to read it. See, I feel like one flows better, but we're going to talk about communication breakdowns or breakdowns in communication. And, you know, the significance that it is in a relationship, because I was going to say like in marriage, however, it can be with any relationship that you're dealing with, whether it be friendships or whether it be, you know, parental relationships or whatever. It's, you know, when you have these breakdowns in communication, it can really hinder a relationship. It can mess up relationships. It can tear them apart. It can cause, you know, miscommunication, misunderstandings. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really dangerous to stay in a place of, you know, like where you're not operating at your full potential.
Yeah. I think ultimately breakdowns in communication or absence of communication, it prevents you from being on one accord, right?
Yeah.
And I think in order to be successful in anything as a group or as a pair or as a team, people need to know what's up. Right? You have to be on one accord. Like you can't be playing offense and I'm playing defense.
Right. And with that, sometimes I think people feel like I don't think that they feel like. Sometimes I believe people are unaware of some of the things that they're allowing or doing that could be hindering their relationship and they not even know because it's not on their radar. Mm-hmm. You know, so the things we're going to talk about today, hopefully we'll put some things on our radar so that we can be mindful and hopefully be better communicators.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges off top is just life, right? Because as life it's so easy to get caught up in just living, mm-hmm. right? You go on to work, you're raising children, you're tired, you know what I'm saying? You're living life. And sometimes if great communication isn't going to happen by happenstance, right? It's intentional and you have to try to do that.
I feel you. It definitely is intentional. And like you were saying, life happens and we start getting wrapped up in the things like, you know, like we get in habits of just living. and taking care of what needs to be taken care of. Like, these bills need to be paid. I got to do what needs to be done. These kids got to be taken care of. Got to do what needs to be done. You know, this comes up, got to do what needs to be done, but not being intentional of our time, or intentional of how we talk to people, or intentional of how we are understood. Because I know sometimes people think communication stops there. But when I was in school, you know, studying communication, it was more so communication doesn't stop with you sending a message, you delivering the message, you saying it. It also includes the way that it's received. And so that's why it's important to do things like check for understanding, etc., because it doesn't just stop with you saying what you have to say, like as if, oh, I'm a good communicator because I said my part. There's so many pieces that go into communication.
Yeah, because if you say something and it comes off, it sounds good, right? And you're like, yeah, I said that. If the person hasn't received what you said, you said nothing.
Right.
And the challenge with that is that's not necessarily even all your fault.
Right.
It may be part of your fault, but it could be the other person was not ready for communication.
Right.
And that's part of communication, making sure they're ready to receive.
I know. And on top of that, what's interesting is it also includes experience. You ever hear nature versus nurture?
One of my favorites.
Okay. Oh, it's one of your favorites?
Yeah, I love to say nature versus nurture.
Oh, you like to say it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyways, with nature versus nurture, it's like, oh, is this who you are? Is this like within you? Is this because of your family, etc.? Like, is that why you are the way you are? Or is it because of your experiences that you've been through, the environment you've grown up in, etc.? Well, I think it's a combination of both. And I think like when we receive things, our life's experiences kind of change our views. So me having the life that I've had and you having the life that you have, we see things differently, and that's okay. It doesn't make one right. It doesn't make one wrong. It's super subjective, but that's because that's our experience, right? That we've had. But when it comes to communicating, I may say something to you and in my mind, I know exactly what I'm saying. It cannot be more clear, but you receive it completely different than what I meant it. What I learned in communication when I was studying communication in school was checking for understanding. Like, that's a key part of communication. So when you're talking to someone, especially when you're trying to get across an important point, to check for understanding. I try to do that with our children. So I'll explain something to them and then they'll be like, okay, mama, or yes, or whatever. And then I'll be like, okay, what did I say? And my son says it all the time and my daughter does it too. They'll be like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, were you listening? Or, you know, and then we have to repeat it or rephrase it. So, and I have to check for understanding to make sure that they get it. But I don't think that that's too much to do in a relationship, because the relationships that matter, you want to make sure they're receiving it in a way that it's meant, and you want it to be productive, right?
Yeah.
And so I believe that that's one of the reasons that we have breakdown in communication, is because there's a lack of effective communication. And so when we were looking into this topic, there's all these things that came up and we're going to kind of touch on them. But that's like number one. And I feel like that's an umbrella over everything we're talking about. I feel like all of it is a lack of effective communication when you are doing the things that we're going to talk about. But people don't always check for understanding. They assume that the other person gets it how they meant it. And if the person doesn't, and they don't react the way that we expect them to, we sometimes feel like, you don't care, you don't understand where I'm coming from, you don't get it, or you know what I mean? Whereas you may have received it completely different, or received it in a way I didn't even intend it to be, which could have been prevented if I checked for understanding and we discussed it further, like actually had a conversation about it.
Yeah. And for me, I wouldn't put all that on the person who's initiating the communication either, because I feel like if you initiated the communication and, you know, you shouldn't necessarily, although we do need to confirm that it's understood, I don't know if that should necessarily be all on the one person. I think that the person who's being communicated to should take some responsibility and make sure that they understand what's being said. Right. For instance, I'm in the customer service industry. I'm a hotel manager, right? I deal with a lot of guest issues. When the guest brings to me a concern or an issue, I don't expect them to hey, are you following me? You understand?
Right.
No. What I say is, okay, what I'm understanding is this. And then now we could come with a solution because I've taken an initiative to understand what they're saying.
Right. And that's why communication is a two-way street. It's so cliche, but communication is not just me saying what I have to say and getting it off my chest. It's like the back and forth. It's us getting to the same message, us getting to the same page, us having an understanding. Because sometimes you can find out that, wow, your view could have been completely wrong. Like I could have been trying to tell you something or have perceived something that you did a certain way. And when you're checking for understanding or when we're discussing it further, we're like, oh, well, maybe my understanding of it isn't correct anyway. Like, or maybe we need to do things different to find what works best for us, but lack of effective communication. And like I said, there's so many things that goes into that. So one of the things on this list, and there's like 10 points on here, but lack of communication was the first one, is poor conflict resolution. So what do you think about that? Like, what do you think poor conflict resolution would look like? But yeah, this is what we don't want to do. We don't want to have poor conflict resolution.
Well, I feel like poor conflict resolution is communication without action, right? Because it makes no sense for us to communicate it and talk about it, but nothing gets done. At that point, it's just wasted time, right? So, and I guess this is bigger than just conflict resolution. This is just action in general, which does include conflict resolution. But I feel like if there's no steps after the conversation, then what are we even doing here?
Right. I think that it's like, sometimes our goal is to express how we feel and share how we feel. But like you said, if there's no resolution to the conflict, what are you doing? The lack of the conflict revolution. The lack revolution. Yeah. Okay. Woo, woo. That's what it was, huh? Yeah. Okay. But no, like when you're not having a solution, just like, okay, in the workplace, I never liked it in leadership, right? I was in a leadership role. When you're in leadership and somebody comes to you with conflict problems, you be like, well, what's the solution? Or do you have an idea? Or did you even think of something? Or is it just you want to point out the problems? Because I could feel super attacked if you're constantly coming at me one way and you're like this, but there's never a solution. You never have, well, maybe we could do it this way. It's just like all on me.
Oh, man. Tell me.
Yeah. What you saying?
No, I mean, no, it's just resonating. There's a individual at work, and every morning she comes with what I call CCs, Carmen complaints. She just
Carmen complaints?
No, Carmen. She's supposed to name with a C. And she just has.
Does she listen to this?
She does not. So I'm working on those. But yeah, it's just it's constant. It is constant. It never stops. But yeah, and there's never a solution. So there's no conflict resolution. There's just conflict acknowledgement, I guess.
But what is the point of that? Like, okay, so what is your point of bringing up a conflict? Tell me, like, what is the point of someone bringing up a conflict? What do you think?
Well, I mean, in this context in which we're talking with these CCs, I'm assuming she's expecting me to come up with a solution for the issues that she's bringing up.
For you to.
For me to.
So I'm bringing you a problem, you fix it.
That's what that is.
But when you're in a relationship, if I'm bringing you a problem and I'm just like, I'm bringing this problem, you fix it, that can cause defense mode too. If we're not like, if you're just like, here, this is the problem, that can come off as nagging. That can come off some kind of way.
Trust me.
You can be like, oh my gosh, here we go again. And you're not really interested in fixing it. You just are, now you're like, here they come, bringing more problems.
And so when that conversation comes, you go into it. The guard's already up. Like, I don't feel like hearing these. I got work to do. You know what I mean? And that's not a good spot to be in when you're trying to resolve conflict.
So being intentional about not just how you're presenting it and what you're presenting, but like, are we presenting this to seek revolution? Are we seeking a resolution, or am I complaining? I feel like there's a difference, because if you're just presenting problem after problem after problem and there is no solution, then like it comes off some kind of way. It can come off as nagging. It can come off as like, okay, here you go again. It's always something with you, when you could be like, okay, well, this is done and it makes things harder for me. Maybe we can try. Do you think that would be better received though? Maybe not with everyone.
I think it's going to be case by case, to be honest with you. I don't think there's a specific way to do it. I think that as long as you go in with the mindset of resolving the issue, and both parties are on the same page as it relates to that, and I think that's the common ground that it needs to be built upon.
I think most important before any of this is one of the major breakdowns in communication would have to be the breakdown in your you praying as Christ followers, right? If you want to have a strong relationship and you want it to be based on, like, you want it to be successful and everything, as followers of Christ, I believe that the foundation needs to be God. And so we need to pray. We need to pray without ceasing. We need to constantly pray for our partner, constantly pray for our children, constantly pray for our friends. And I mean, if we're praying without ceasing, we definitely have enough stuff to pray about. Constantly pray about the way that we're communicating, constantly pray about resolution, and pray that God can open your eyes and that you guys can work together to get to resolution. But one of the problems is that people are communicating or arguing without a resolution in sight. And then, like, they're not working on any kind of let's fix this. So the problems just linger and build up. And then people feel like they don't want to take it. I don't want to be your friend anymore. I don't want to be in a relationship with you anymore. I don't want to come to you for advice anymore because you only point out problems. I feel better when people are invested in making something work. And if you're only presenting the problems, you may be invested and want it to work, but that may not be the best approach to point out the problem within it, you know? So that was one of the things that can contribute to, or is an example of, a breakdown in communication. Another one is stonewalling or withdrawal. So what do you think about that? Like, explain what you believe stonewalling or withdrawal is.
Not having the conversation. One communicator is attempting to communicate and the other person is not participating in the communication. And different people have different communication styles. So it's not that always in that moment, right? If someone's trying to communicate, it's not always that you have the right answer at that moment. But it's important to communicate that, at least, you know what I mean? Communicate that you're processing it, but come back is the thing, don't just let it go.
Yeah. And so one of the definitions that came up, or the little summary about stonewalling and withdrawal, is pretty much what you said, but one or both partners may shut down or withdraw from communication during conflicts, which prevents issues from being addressed and resolved. So you're not, like you said, you're not addressing things, you're not fixing anything. There's no conflict resolution. So I feel it does play into that. But another thing is withdrawing because you feel unheard, or you become defensive, or you feel that the other person's not listening to you or whatever. So then you're just like, I'm not going to do this at all. Because then things just linger. There is no solution ever. And you guys just keep pushing along, keep trekking along, and nothing's happening. You just are building problem on top of problem on top of problem. That's a problem with you raising children. You don't want to not address the things that they're doing, but you want to do it in love, but you want to make sure that we growing up adults, they're going to be grown-ups one day. They're going to be the future leaders of America. And if we're not nipping the things that need to be nipped in the bud immediately, then they'll grow up doing these things, and that could be harmful for themselves. It could be harmful for their future relationships, etc. But in your marriage, or in that kind of relationship, or a friendship, when you decide to withdraw, or I don't want to deal with you, or whatever the case is, because something happens, there will be no growth in that.
Not only will there be no growth, but it's just like the straw that broke the camel's back, right? Like, the more unresolved conflict that weighs you down, then it could be just the smallest little thing, right? That's going to make the whole thing start. Yeah. So, like, you got to get out from under all the weights.
What'd you say?
You got to get from under all the weights.
Yeah, I feel you.
What do you thought I said?
I didn't know. It sounded kind of gibberish.
Oh, wow.
No. No, it was like, you gotta go below what I was like, wait. That's why I was like, what did you say? I didn't catch that. They heard you, I didn't. So, okay. So, but withdrawing, because then you're not dealing. You're just not dealing. That's your answer. But the thing is, you never know the reason why someone may withdraw. It could be like, well, I don't want to go off on you. But like you said, it's important to revisit it. Like, let's come back to it later, or let's think on these things, or let me, get my thoughts together, or let me, write it down, or, so I can collect my thoughts, and then we can talk about the issues. And I of course I'm saying pray before anything and all things, because I feel like if you will go to God in prayer and say, okay, God, prepare our hearts for the conversation we're going to have, give us the words to say, help us to truly express ourselves as we need to express it to really convey the message that we're trying to convey, but like give it to God and invite him in every piece and part of your relationship. I think that it would really help no matter what relationship it is.
Yeah. And you hit on something, and I just want to kind of reiterate, because it's important to understand that your spouse is in it with you, right? So if they are with stonewalling
or withdrawing,
there may be some good reasons as to why, like you hit on. Like it could be, like you said, they're at a point where they might say something that they shouldn't say, so they stonewall so they can calm down. Or it could be they don't want to hurt your feelings, so they need to figure out how to say it in a better way. You know what I mean? There's sometimes reasons for this, but you can't use it as an excuse. You have to get over it, figure it out, and move forward.
Yeah, that's true. That's good. One of the things that stands out with that is like the perception that comes along with it. Like one person may think them being that way is them not being involved, or them not caring, or them not, you know what I mean? When it may be that, or it may not. But I think it's important to have conversations outside of anger. So like before there's a problem, or when there is no problem, or when you're not tripping out on each other, or, you know, if you're not angry with each other, like when you're in a good moment, it's important to talk about, okay, we're not doing this, and then keep your word on it. If something does arise, don't do that. You know what I mean? Like if we get angry, we know that one of us or both of us could possibly say something, or we need to process or whatever, like talk about it before there's a problem. So then you know how to handle it when problems arise. You know,
being proactive, not reactive.
Yeah, exactly. So another number 4 on this list is criticism and contempt. Criticizing or belittling each other using sarcasm or insults and displaying contemptuous behavior can undermine the emotional connection and trust in a relationship. What are your thoughts on that? Because I think it's sometimes, you know, belittling I think is wrong. But I mean, sarcasm, you think it just needs to be avoided completely? I think sometimes it's within jokes and stuff.
Well, yeah, if it's in the context of joking,
right?
But to gaslight, or you know, to try to make your point passive aggressively, that kind of stuff. And when I hear this, I think of you statements. You always do this, and you always you know. What I think we learned in some classes a while back, it's I feel this way when this happens. Is the way to have that conversation, even though you said the same thing, but certain words spark certain reactions sometimes. So it's important to try to steer away from those.
Yeah, I've said that before. Like, you always leave something around the house, and you're like, I don't always. I'm like, you do a lot of the time. And then like you a lot of the time this happens more times than not. I don't mean anything by it, but I'm working on it. But criticism and contempt. So like, I never think it's okay I don't believe that it's ever okay to belittle your spouse, or you don't want to belittle the people you love. You shouldn't really be belittling people, but you don't want to belittle your children or your spouse or your friends, you know, just tear them down. Like, I don't believe that. I believe that if there's things that are happening that you disagree with or whatever, it could or could not be it may or may not be time for you to say something. Sometimes it's like, why would you say something? You need to pray and ask God to touch you, because that's a you thing. Or you can have a conversation in love where it doesn't come off as you just criticizing somebody. You know, I don't believe that in a relationship, especially a loving relationship, that you would hurl insults. You know, some people have a humor where they joke around and they, you know, it's just natural for them to play around like that. But we need to know our spouse's limits and know the things that we probably shouldn't play around with. And then those things which would have to happen if you're actually talking to your spouse, because you have to be, some people don't like confrontation at all. You have to come to a place to where you feel comfortable knowing, okay, this is the person I married, or these are my children. Or as a child, like, I don't like, this makes me feel this kind of way when you say it. Like we have to be bold enough to come and be that vulnerable for the relationships that matter in our lives.
Yeah.
Because if it don't matter, then you don't have to have that conversation because you don't really have to be around them. You know what I mean? But if it's relationships worth having and relationships that we want to be successful, we have to be vulnerable enough to communicate the things that bother us because a person may not know. And so they may play around with something that's insensitive, but they didn't realize it. They were trying to be funny. You know?
Yeah. I'll also say along this this point is that all criticism isn't negative, right? I think it gets I think it gets a negative connotation, but it's not necessarily. There's constructive criticism out there. So when we talk about criticism, we're talking about the intent to tear down, because there's a certain type of criticism that brings stuff to the forefront, right? And the purpose of that is to build up.
Right.
So just make sure you know the difference.
And I think it's also, that's why communication is so important, because sometimes people may receive even the loving criticism some kind of way because of insecurities or whatever. Like there's reasons why we react the way that we do or get defensive because you're hitting a sore spot. You know what I mean? So now I'm being defensive because I feel attacked because it's something that may actually be something I need to work on, but I feel some kind of way about it. And so I really am now feeling attacked. But not because it's not true, not because you didn't do it in love, but because it's an issue I have within myself. So I wonder how people should navigate that. Like, and that's why I think prayer is so important, especially when you're having hard conversations or just in general. Like we need to invite God into our relationship and make and ensure that he's present in the foundation of it, because I need to pray, even if one partner knows God and the other one doesn't, or both knows God, or I mean, because you're probably not praying if nobody knows God, but just go before God and be like, hey, help me to not be so sensitive with certain things. Or if it's something that's revealed to me that I need to work on, Lord, or if it, because usually if it's bothering you like that, or it makes you that mad and they're really coming from a place of love and they don't mean something by it, it might be something that needs to be fixed.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes me think of like a doctor. Like you don't go to the doctor's office and get mad when they're sewing or stitching you up because they're touching a sore spot, right? That you have to touch sore spots in order for them to get better. And yeah, you like that, don't you? But yeah, in order for it to get better. And when it comes to our conversations and our relationships, sometimes we don't want the sore spots to be touched.
Right. We want you to stay away. We want you to play and talk and have a good time. But then when it's time to address the meat of it, you don't want anyone to go in that place. And sometimes I feel like people do that with God, right? We're like, you can have this, Lord, you can have it, but you can't touch this, Father God. I'm not ready to give this to you. And with our relationship with him, it's like, hey, nothing should be off the table. My goal, his goal, I'm not talking about Essence goal, but I want us to be better as well. But God is making us better. God is growing us. He is making us more and more, like he's doing things in our life to help bring out the characteristics of Christ. And if we're not willing to lay things down or go in certain areas or give him free reign in our lives or give him access to different things, we will never reach the potential that he has for us. So in relationships, if we are one with our spouse and there's an area that they're telling us like, this is something that hurts me, or this is something that you do that I feel like, I'm noticing it, and your spouse comes from a place of love because they care about you and they love you, then maybe you need to just pray about it and say, Lord, if this is something that I need to work on, please touch me. But usually I think if it's something that's really bothering you or triggering you, it may be something there. It may be something that you need to work on. It may be something that you're dealing with that you may be sensitive about it for a reason. So another one, this is number 5, is invalidation of feelings. Dismissing or minimizing each other's feelings, needs, and perspectives can create feelings of rejection and alienation, making it difficult to maintain intimacy and closeness. What are your thoughts on invalidation of feelings as far as a breakdown in communication?
I think this is an easy one to fall into. And I'm not saying it from the point of you not caring about your spouse, but it's so much easier for us to care about ourselves than to care about other people.
Not even intentionally.
Right? So we'll go in to the conversation wanting to be heard, wanting our feelings to be validated, right? And if I'm caring about my feelings being validated, who's caring about Essence's feelings, right? So if we both come in with that mindset, we just send words to one another, and there's really no conflict resolution there.
That's interesting. So the mindset that we should go into is putting your spouse before yourself, putting your children before yourself, putting others before yourself, and hopefully you both are doing the same thing and everybody's being heard.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever heard me say, you probably have. My idea of a marriage that is thriving and is successful is when each spouse's goal is to outlove one another, right? If my goal is to love Essence better than Essence could ever love me, and Essence's goal is to love me more than I could ever love her, you can't miss, okay? Because we're both putting each other first.
Right. Yeah.
Same thing in the conversation. If you want to go in, my goal is to hear and resolve whatever's bothering Essence.
And vice versa.
And
that's how you can love your spouse as yourself, because the word tells us that we should love our neighbors, we should love others as ourselves, right? And then as we're focusing on that, like God's got it. He gonna make sure we taken care of, even if, and I think that's hard. That can be hard in relationships. I believe that the spouse you're with can help make it easier, but still it's like putting your wants, your needs, what you feel you need, your wants, your desires, and also your ideas to the side and putting someone else before you. Because that can be hard, because in your mind, if you feel that they don't care about you the way that you care about them, or they're not if you don't believe that they're loving you like themselves, then you're going to think that you're not going to be taken care of, that you're in it alone, and that nobody has your back.
Yeah. And that is the challenge of this, is because, is because if I am trying to love Essence more than Essence could love me, and Essence is not trying to love me as much as, you get it, the vice versa, right?
Yeah, and vice versa.
That could be the challenge, because then you can look at that, well, okay, well then I'm not going to love her like that. But that's not what we're called to do. This is why
that's tit for tat, and we're not called to do that. God doesn't do that with us. Thank the Lord.
Thank God.
He don't do that, because he always gets the tat or the tat, whatever. He gets one of them, and it's not he gonna get the one, but we always reap benefit from what he provides, and like we would never want that. Like we have to know, if you don't want it, don't do it.
Exactly. Yeah, and you hear us in church saying words or phrases like "die to yourself," right? And this is practically what we're talking about, right? Do your feelings matter? Yes. Right? God cares about your feeling. He cares about you. But when you die to yourself, you're putting someone else above you.
Yeah. And look at it as being on assignment. When God calls you to something, it doesn't mean he doesn't care about you, but it means you're on assignment to do what he's called you to do. So sometimes when you're on assignment, offense comes along with it. Sometimes when you're on assignment, hardships and trials come along, but God's with you every step of the way. And you being on assignment in your marriage, you're on assignment. As a parent, you're on assignment. In these friendships that are especially God ordained friendships, even if they're ones that are for seasons, you are on assignment. And so when you're on assignment, offense will come. When you're on assignment, things don't happen the way that we just desire them to, but we have to remember that it's all for God's glory. And that is the purpose of this life we're living. It's for his glory. Of course, we want to do his will and share his message, share his word with others. We want people to accept Jesus and live for him. However, we need to do what we've been called to do while we're here, also in the sense of loving on others as Christ loves us, which is before himself. And that is why God sent Jesus to die on the cross for us, because he put others' needs, others' desires, others' salvation before his life. And so dying to self is putting maybe your wants, your desires, the things that you would prefer to the side, not overlooking you and what you should be doing or what your goals are, but in the meantime to uplift and edify and build up someone else. Sometimes, and I know that I feel like this is controversial, because what if I want this, or what about me and my needs and my wants? Okay, we live in America. That's common. However, we are followers of Christ. We do not belong here. Our home, our residence is not here on earth. Okay. And so even though the world is like that, we have to operate in a different place. We have to operate from the direction in the word of God. And we have to love others before ourselves. And that's not easy. And we don't, that's why I say it's like not even intentional, right? Like we don't intentionally not, it's just we've grown up in a place where everyone else's needs are second to our own or after ours. But we can't allow the programming of this world to take us off of course and get us distracted from the assignment and what God's called us to do. All that to say that. Okay. So another one, number 6, unwillingness to listen. So when one or both parties are not receptive to listening to each other's viewpoints or empathizing with their experiences, it can lead to feeling of neglect or loneliness. I think it's one thing to share your points, right? You can share it, but you also have to listen. And that's why communication is important. And it's not just one way, because I can express it and you can get it, but then I also need to listen to you, share your viewpoints, and it can be different. So speaking not to get my point across, but speaking for resolution and solution, speaking to also hear and try to resolve, Yeah.
I think this is very, very closely connected to the one we just did prior, because the same reason why people will be unwilling to listen is usually for selfish ambition, or it could be that some people are checked out, right? And that's a whole nother situation where you need to go back to the cross, right? And then figure out what's going on to get back on track with this stuff. But I think they're almost the same in my opinion.
Unwillingness to listen and invalidation of feelings.
Well, I mean, not necessarily the topic, but what we went into as we discussed it.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think like if someone's telling you how they feel, the previous one, like invalidating your feelings, like you feel some kind of way and it's as if you're not entitled to feel how you're feeling, not acknowledging that you feel that way. And even though I may feel different, that still matters that you feel that way. I think that that's, a little different than the unwillingness to listen, because some people may not want to receive anything you're saying just because they feel attacked or whatever. So I do think it goes hand in hand. I think it's different, but I think it goes hand in hand. So yeah, I agree. I think that when you're not listening, I think sometimes people do that. Like they get angry, so they don't want to hear what you have to say. Like they're like, you could say whatever you want. I'm not listening to you. You're tripping. I don't want to hear it. Like, here you go again. So I think it does, like you said, play into that, because your feelings will be invalidated if your spouse won't even hear. You're trying to communicate, this is how I feel and this makes me feel this way, or this does, when you do this does that, but you're mad because of whatever reason, and it could be warranted, but now you're not even hearing what I have to say. Like that is a huge breakdown in communication. It's a lack of communication, and it could like mess up a whole relationship. Because now I'm telling you how I feel and you don't even listen to me. Like people are going to check out of that, which leads to more breakdowns of communication, because now you're stonewalling, there's withdrawal, there's poor conflict resolution. Like it all does play together.
Yeah. At some point, it's just all out argument.
Yeah. It's just all a mess. It's all messy. You know what I'm saying? But sometimes people do these things and don't even realize they're doing it. Because you ever hear the thing about fighting fair, which is weird, because I'm like, when you're fighting, is it really fair? I mean, you need to do what you need to do if you're fighting. However, that's different than what we're talking about here, because I'm saying fighting, but I don't mean fighting. I mean, like, we want to communicate with a purpose. You know what I mean? We want to be led by God in our relationships. We don't want to just be out here like doing whatever and thinking it's going to be successful. Things that are successful, things that work out, take work. Things that are worth having, take work. And like, if you're not willing to put in the work, but you're okay with lack of communication, not coming up with solutions, all those things, not listening, but you want it to work, and you're wondering why it's not going to, because you're not being intentional about having a successful relationship. And successful relationships take intentionality. You have to be intentional. And we definitely don't have it all together, nor does any person. And that's why we need Jesus, right? And so, but it's good to know the things like the breakdowns, because sometimes we don't even realize it's something that we're doing until we hear it. And we're like, wow, okay, Holy Spirit, I'm dealing with this. Like, okay, I heard that on there. I do this. Help me to not do this. Help me to communicate from a place of love. Help me to communicate from a place where I am building up, not breaking and tearing down. Like, because we never want to do that to those that we love. Number 7 is assumptions and mind reading. So it's like making assumptions about what the other person is thinking or feeling without verifying it through open communication. And that can lead to misunderstanding and misinterpretation. And
the longer you've been in the relationship, it's easier to feel like you can do this, right? Because you know your spouse, and it feels like you even know what's wrong before you know what's wrong. And you might be right.
Sometimes you may.
But however, you might not.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's exactly the problem. You know what I mean? So it's important to communicate and confirm what's actually going on.
And check for understanding. Like you said, confirm. Like, don't just assume.
Right. And because the fact of the matter is people change, right? And people develop, and people's thoughts and ideas change. So you might have been right a year ago.
Or 5 years ago or whatever.
Or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But at this point, it might be something different. So you need to verify that.
Yeah. So don't just assume, and don't assume that someone knows or should have known whatever it was, especially if you never communicated it before. Oh, we've been together this long. They should just know. Yeah, but you can also be let down. Our expectations will get us in a place of anger. It'll bring us all the way down because we over here feeling like our spouse should have known, and maybe they should have. However, they just don't in this situation. And now you over here mad at them because you thought they were intentional. Yeah.
Just tell them.
Because I get it though. Sometimes we feel like I shouldn't have to. However, yeah, we shouldn't, but you do. So there we go with the assumptions, assuming we don't have to.
Or if you want the results, right? If you want them to action whatever your thoughts are, what do you prefer? For them to read your mind incorrectly, or for you to tell them verbally and get the results you're looking for?
Yeah.
Choice is yours.
And I know that people, because, like, I get it. Like, you feel like they should know. They probably should, but they don't. And so are you willing? Do you rather fight over them should have knowing, or do you just communicate and avoid the fight in the first place? Just if you want to assume something, assume they don't know and just communicate it. But, and if they got a problem over that, then y'all take it to the Lord. Okay, 8, avoidance of difficult topics, ignoring or avoiding discussing important issues such as finances, parenting, or intimacy can create unresolved tension and conflict within the relationship. What are your thoughts on that?
It's true. Luckily, I have a wife who wouldn't allow that to take place in the house. If there's a conversation needed to be had, she will bring it up. So praise the Lord for that.
Yeah, avoidance of difficult topics. I feel like people definitely shouldn't do that because it allows room for the enemy to have a foothold and things to fester. If you just avoid everything wrong, you'll look up one day and then not have a spouse, or you'll look up one day and just not have a relationship because the things that were issues were never addressed. And I think a lot of these things can play into that. Like, it can be because of an unwillingness to listen, or assumptions, or, there's so many things that can contribute to there being avoidance. Some people don't like conflict. However, the things that are worth having they don't usually come easy. They're difficult. And we shouldn't avoid difficulties in life in general. God doesn't allow us to avoid difficulties when he's giving us blessings, but we have to push through and continue. We have to face things head on, and it just is what it is. It's as you're maturing in life. It's a part of life. It's a part of being an adult. It's a part of growing mentally, spiritually. I mean, everything has to grow or it dies. If you're not growing, you're dying. Yeah. And I want my relationships to grow.
Yeah. Difficulty is the thing that most helps you to grow, right? If you look at any bodybuilder, right? When they go into the gym, they're not pushing the light weights. I mean, they might be doing a whole lot of reps doing that. They might be doing that, but they increase the difficulty to get the better results, right? And just like that in your conversation with these difficult conversations, in order to get results, right, you have to deal with the difficult.
And in order for those muscles to grow, they break down. They're and they have to rebuild up. And just like you said, within those relationships that are important, those relationships that we care about, we can't just run at the sign of difficulty, but we have to face it. We have to get through it in life. When we're growing in God and when we're reaping the blessings that he has for us, God doesn't always just give you something. He'll take you through some stuff. You ever notice things be getting hard before you receive the blessing? It's like he has to prepare you so that you don't squander it away when you get it. Like you have to go through hard things and understand. Like you're dealing with finance. Oh, this is hard. You can't just give up. Like you'll never receive more if you can't be a wise steward over what you do have. So you have to go through whatever it is, learn the lessons that you need to learn in order to get the more of whatever it is. And finance is just an example, but whatever it is, God doesn't usually take us to the next level of anything without us having to go through hardships. If some of the most successful relationships, and this is by the standards that, like, I believe, people who are loving on each other, people who communicate well, people who are strongly rooted and grounded in the word of God, people who have gone through some stuff and they're still there. Some of my best relationships in life and friendships are from people who I've been through hard times with, because we've gone through those hard times and we're still there. And so I know I can count on them. I know I can lean on them. I know I can trust them. When with our children, like if they're going to trust us, they know because if we're proving ourselves to be trustworthy, because there's situations in relationships where people they don't come through for you. You know what I mean? And when you avoid those things, they're not going to feel that they can depend on you through those times. That's when you know that you can trust this individual. You can lean on this individual. With our relationship with God, if God didn't bring us through hard times, we wouldn't know that we can call on him. We wouldn't know that we can lean on him and that he always comes through. We wouldn't know that provisions were made if there wasn't issues or troubles or needs that would make us feel like I need provisions. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? We wouldn't know how faithful God is unless we've been through things where we needed him to be faithful. Those situations we needed him to be faithful in. And it's no different in any relationship. Like hard stuff happens. You go through some things. You just have to press on, know that you're not alone. God's always with you and you have to deal with it. We have to be bold. We can't, rear back and be all scary and stuff. And if we're scary, we got to do it anyway. Do it afraid. So, okay. You have anything to add for that part?
I don't.
We only have 2 more. So 9 is failure to communicate needs and expectations. When partners do not express their needs, desires, and expectations clearly, it can lead to unmet needs and feelings of dissatisfaction in the relationship.
I feel like that's the one we just did.
Is it? I thought it was avoidance and difficult topics.
Oh, no, you might be right.
Okay. So I think that's avoiding difficult things, like avoiding difficult topics, not addressing them at all. But I think sometimes people have things that they want in the relationship and they don't know how to address it. So it kind of fits with the previous one, but then they don't communicate it. For example, this is something super small, but it's something that happened in our relationship, like probably in year 1 or 2 or something early on in our relationship. Leonard bought me a present. It's like super simple. But I'm going to tell you the reason behind it. And he bought me jewelry and he knew things that were my favorites. And so he figured, oh, this is a good idea because she likes pink and she likes green. And so I'm going to get her some jewelry that has pink and green. But I personally am not a fan of all that colorful jewelry and stuff unless it's like something, simple or whatever. And so he was like, oh, I was like, oh, thank you. Appreciative of the gift. But then he was like, oh, do you like it? I was like, well, it's not really my style. And it wasn't because I was trying to break down or tear down Leonard or make him feel some kind of way for giving it to me. But my thing is this is my husband. This is early in our relationship. How else will he know the things that his wife likes? How else will he know, like, if he desires to ever buy me jewelry ever again in life? Because, I was honest when he asked me, but I did it in a loving way and I wasn't rude or anything. But I want him to know, just like I want him to communicate with me, because I want this relationship to work and I want us to know each other. And in knowing each other, you have to be honest with each other. And this is a small example, which could be big depending on how people communicate it, right? And how they go about sharing things. But even, when people are newer to relationships, or even like when you guys are being intimate physically and there's things that you don't like and you just go with it, you may then not have a desire to move forward in being intimate because you're like, I don't like that. Like, and they always do that. You have to talk about these things. And I think there's a time and place to talk about them. Like in our example, you asked me if I liked it or not. In those situations, like if it was that kind of situation where it was intimate, I think you should have that conversation outside of that, like not in the moment, because that could, really play with somebody's, confidence. But I think there's a lot of things that need to be addressed. Like if I do something that makes Leonard feel uncomfortable, I would want Leonard to be honest and feel that he can come to me and be vulnerable and know that it's a safe space to share that with me, and that I care about the things that he wants. And I would, you know what I mean? Like I would not make him feel some kind of way for sharing it. But I know that people sometimes fail to communicate those needs and expectations because of fear. But then also having expectations. If you have expectations in your relationship, you definitely need to communicate that, or else you will be let down.
Yeah. An uncommunicated expectation is a hope, right? It's a desire, right? It's not you can't expect what you haven't communicated. That's just foolish.
Yeah. And when you have expectations, but like it hasn't been communicated, you will be let down, period. Because people, like, that's why I try not to have expectations of people. There's certain expectations I have of my spouse, but there's usually the expectations. We've talked about those things, like we're on the same page with those things. If you haven't communicated those expectations, like you're setting yourself up for failure, in my opinion, my humble opinion. Yeah. Okay. And then last, lack of empathy and understanding. So the inability to empathize, that's like feeling for your partner and what they're going through and stuff, with each other's experiences and perspectives, can create emotional distance and prevent partners from feeling emotionally connected and supported.
Mm-hmm. And for me, it's twofold, right? And I talked a little bit about the action after the communication. And so I think that the empathy and understanding, I lost my train of thought.
It's okay. I saw it. I saw when it happened. And you lost it. I just saw it and you were like,
wait, where was I going with this?
Yeah, I hate when that happens.
It has something to do with doing, but also communicating that you understand, right? It's twofold. Not just, it's one thing to just communicate, okay, I hear you, this is what you mean, but not taking action about it. It's also another thing, the opposite of that is doing actions, but never communicating it. I think that both need to be done. I think me personally, I've always kind of went toward, okay, let me just make these actions, but I think that I'm learning that you have to verbally communicate some of this stuff too. Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Like, show you understand and you feel for whatever it is that it is.
Yeah.
What if you don't have that? How do you show empathy if you don't have it? Like, if you're like, you're tripping.
Well, I don't think you have to. I don't think you have to fully grasp it all in order to be empathetic. Like, and I don't even think you have to fully agree in order to be empathetic. I think that the fact that I see how whatever the situation is affecting you, I have empathy because of that. And I don't want you to feel the way you're feeling right now. So because of that empathy, there's going to be some deep diving into figuring out what's going on.
Right. And because you care for your spouse so much, or you care for your children, or whatever relationship it is, you care for them. You don't want them to feel that way and feel that way about you, like that you're making them feel a certain type of way. So it's important to communicate and get to the bottom of it. But the things that we shared today are really breakdowns in communication. These are the things not to do. Yeah, we talked about like why, and kind of like the opposite of like communicate, show love, show that they matter, empathize, etc. But these are the things that sometimes we do these things and don't even realize we're doing it. We get so caught up in just living life and doing us that we don't realize that our actions could be chipping away at our relationship. And so ultimately, we need to make sure that we are going before God in everything. If you are experiencing issues in your relationship, pray about it. Lift it up to God. He is the foundation of it all. He has a whole Bible that has so many instructions on your relationship, on your role in your relationship, just so many different things about just how to be, how to live, the characteristics and traits of Jesus, like what we should be striving to be and do, etc. And it's like so helpful, but sometimes people just won't turn to it. We get so busy that we put the most important things sometimes on the back burner. which is our relationship with God, which is our relationships in life with our spouse and with our children, etc., our friends. We put those things aside and we focus on everything else, and we treat people how we treat them, not even thinking about it, because our way is the only way. And we could be really hurting those that we really care about. We could be losing out on relationships that God has in our lives so that we could pour into each other, so we can be a blessing and they could be a blessing. Like, let's do what we've been called to do. Let's not allow these breakdowns in communication to hinder what God has for us and to hinder us growing and becoming exactly who He's called us to be. Mm-hmm. I believe relationships are really important. I believe that the different relationships we have in our lives, especially the ones of the people that are supposed to be in our lives, regardless of what level, are pictures of our relationship and how God is with us. There's growth in them. There are lessons to be learned. There are ways and opportunities for us to love others as Christ loves the church. There's ways and opportunities for us to love others before ourselves. And that's what we need to do. That's what we've been called to do as a Christ follower. Mm-hmm. So if you're not following Christ, I pray you follow him. But then you probably be like, I mean, they may be mad. So, I don't care about what they have to say. You do what you do. But I'm talking from a Christ follower's point of view. So.
Yeah, I say recognize the breakdowns for what they are, mm-hmm. and figure out a way to overcome them.
Yeah, let's not be defensive. And if something like struck a chord with you, and you're like, well, I feel I need to say what I have to say. Maybe that very thing that you feel that way about is the area that you probably need to say, okay, let me just lift up to God. That bothered me that they said that. Maybe I think they're wrong. But Lord, if this is something within me, then reveal it to me. And let me tell you something, He will. Mm-hmm. Because I've prayed to God and said, Lord, I feel this way. If there's something there, reveal it to me. And sometimes it don't happen immediately and sometimes it does. But there's been times where God has shown me, like Essence, you're trying to do the bare minimum to reap a reward. And I'm like, whoa, Lord, because I prayed and I said, Lord, reveal whatever it is, that I prayed. Reveal it to me. And He did. So seek Him and trust that He will speak to you and trust that you can hear Him, because those are areas that I've struggled with. So I can't be the only one, right? So there are breakdowns in communication that can really hinder your relationship and could cause you to lose a relationship. So let's lift it up to God, especially, these relationships are very important, you guys, and we have to do what we can, be who God has called us to be, and grow. And as we're growing in these relationships and we're modeling the things of God, they're going to be blessed. So, yeah. You have anything to add?
No.
Well, I pray your relationships, you don't have these. I pray that you do not have these communication breakdowns. But if you do, I pray that you go before the Lord, ask Him to help you and guide you, and He will. So you guys stay blessed. Thanks so much. That's been another episode of Love and Honor. And we will see you next week. Stay blessed.
Peace.